Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Super Lunch Roast Podcast, episode number 81. I am Brendan.
And I'm Nate.
Nate's back.
Yeah.
Yay!
Woo.
Nate's back. All right, we're going to be talking about UFC Fight Night, Vittori versus Costa. Probably cover the main event of Bellator 269, Fedor versus Johnson. And then maybe some KSW stuff. Really, it's just one fighter who used to be World's Strongest Man. Now he's been fighting in MMA for like a decade now. He just got a pretty cool knockout, so that was pretty fun. What else we got? That's pretty much it. There's some other news going on with some other fighters. We'll get to that. So before we get started, please like, subscribe. If you like what we're doing, please let us know. Comment down below. Let me know what you thought of the fights. Let me know what other fights you'd like us to cover. Maybe there's another league that I don't know about that you would like us to cover. Maybe you guys are all diehard ONE FC fans, and I should watch more of that stuff. So, yeah, like, subscribe, please. Tell somebody else about this. I'd appreciate it. All right. So, remember about 2 years ago?
Just, just let it bubble up.
Remember about 2 years ago when I said, watch out for this Italian fellow? Anyway, so I said...
Because he's going to get screwed by the UFC harder than anyone possibly could.
Well, I mean, I did say, like I said, about it's probably 2 years ago. I wasn't on the earliest Marvin Vettori hype train, but I was pretty early on. I said that he was going to be likely fighting for the belt. He was going to be a challenge for everybody in that division. And lo and behold, what do we have? We have the number, what is he? He's number 2 ranked?
Mm-hmm.
No, number 5 ranked somehow. He's below Derek Brunson and Jared Cannonier. Robert Whitaker, I understand. But Paulo Costa is still ranked number 2 after this weekend. I don't know how. So Marvin Vettori getting the 5-round decision.
Middleweight or light heavyweight?
Middleweight.
Yeah.
No, middleweight. These are middleweights. Did you not know that?
That was a middleweight fight?
I think
Wait,
so.
hold on.
There are middleweights in the fight.
Well, there was one.
There are middleweights in the fight.
Yeah, there was one middleweight.
No, there are middleweights in the fight. Okay, so what Nate is alluding to, and we're being kind of stupid about, is the drama leading up to this. So about a week ago, Paulo Costa, who I have never been a fan of, all right? I have never been a fan of his for many reasons, not the least of which his attitude, his manager, blah, 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 blah. This guy has pulled, remember when he was supposed to fight Robert Whitaker? Remember? And he pulled out of the fight a month in advance because he had the flu.
Yep.
What? Okay, anyway, so pulls out of that fight. Has nothing but excuses for his loss to Israel Adesanya. I drank too much wine. Oh, my knee was hurt, blah, blah, blah. And then coming into this fight about 5 days ago, 6 days ago, maybe the whole week, he said, I can't make 185. Let's fight at a catchweight.
Well, and it wasn't even that he said that. He went to the UFC, and the UFC evaluated along with him, you can't make 185.
Oh, because he was because he was like 215 pounds or 220
He's
pounds.
like, he's 225.
Oh, 225. Okay.
Yeah. He was 40 pounds over. Was not going to make the weight. So the UFC offered him and Vittori the idea of a 195 catchweight. Then he couldn't make that. The closest he could come was 205. So it got changed to a 205 fight.
Yeah. So
I have a lot to say about this.
okay, well, go for it.
All right.
I'll show you guys some pictures from this weekend.
For one, you could just throw me in the camp of Paulo Costa hater. But I don't actually think he's the villain here. I think the UFC is.
Okay.
Fighting is largely an individual PR game for all fighters. As a fighter, you can never come across as the person that is not game to fight. But you have to balance that between the contractual obligations of the divisions you're fighting in and setting up those fights and the camps you're preparing for. Now, obviously, yeah, there's punishments for showing up and not being able to make weight for a fight, but when it's especially, and I think this is somewhat calculated on Paulo Costa's camp. It's not for the belt. You know, he's realizing, all right, not feeling it, not going to make the weight. He essentially could come in and it's a throwaway fight. Whatever, I'm not going to make the weight, but I'm still going to get to fight him. He's going to lose 20% of his purse. All right, whatever, not a big deal for him. Still gets the fight. And he ends up coming across, all right, yeah, they're threatening like you're not going to fight at 185 again, but Dana White is still complimenting his performance. And now people come in and they're complimenting his performance on a fight that he should have never been in the first place. The UFC, when they see a fighter that ridiculously overweight, needs to step in and say, you're not fighting. It should have been pick anyone else in the middleweight division. All right, Vittori trained for 185. He needs to fight someone at 185. If you're a week out and you identify that he can't make the weight, screw you, you're going home. He's fighting someone else. Oh, yeah, and you're suspended for a year. The UFC did what was in the UFC's best interest because Paulo Costa was probably arguably a bigger name than Vettori, and they didn't want to take him off the card. But in doing so, they put Vittori in a situation where it's a no-win for him. He should have, by all rights, he should have absolutely never taken that fight. Paulo Costa's absolute power puncher. He's getting to go in fresher. He didn't have to do the cutting that Vittori did. He can throw more power. He's going to do more damage on him. And he took some serious kicks and some serious head damage in that fight, even though he didn't go down. So it is on the UFC in that position to not put fighters in that situation where like, oh, well, are you willing to take a catch weight? The fighter can't say no. There's like this illusion, well, Vittori could have said no. He really couldn't. Who does he fight next? How does that affect his rankings? How does that affect his career? That's a complete stall out for him. That can't happen. The UFC cannot put fighters in that position.
Yeah. So I think Costa planned this a while ago. I think Costa planned a long time ago, like, yeah, he said he has a break in his arm or whatever. He got cleared to fight. Clearly, nothing was so medically wrong with him that he couldn't fight, all right? So there's that. Based off of how he looked and how he came in, I would say he had a full training camp, trained the whole camp, and he probably knew that he planned this a while ago that he was coming in at 205. So Vettori alluded to it in the post-fight press conference that, that this was a trick. Like he was like, hey, he came in, he was in shape in there, he had cardio to go the distance. I think he did this on purpose, right? He basically just decided, I'm not cutting the weight for this fight. Like maybe it was because of the rankings, maybe it was because of whatever, but for whatever reason, maybe it was a calculated decision, thinking like, oh, hey, if I'm bigger and if I wait till the very last week, I'll make him cut the weight. I'll be bigger and stronger than him, and I'll have a good chance to knock him out, right? It was a calculated decision that he made to do what we have called sanction. A lot of people have called, but we often say sanction cheating, right? Mm-hmm. Missing weight is sanction cheating. Yes, you're punished for it, but it's not a harsh enough punishment. Monetary.
If it's not for a championship fight, it's basically not a punishment.
Well, that's the thing, is for a championship fight, if you win, you don't get the belt. So, like, there is a punishment for that.
I mean, that's what I mean.
Okay.
But if it's not a championship fight, there basically is no punishment.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're right. And then it
should be treated equally or comparably to coming in performance enhanced and popping on a test. You are coming in a performance enhanced state.
Yeah, no, okay.
Against the rules.
Yes. Yeah, for sure that, but I'd still like there to be an opportunity for them to fight if the other person is willing to take the fight. It's just, I think that there should be a point deduction. Like you should start 1 point behind or 2 points behind already.
That's where I disagree, and I think this fight was it was a good comparison because of how high ranked both of them are.
Yeah.
I think they both could have fought, but they should have not fought each other. I think Paulo Costa should have fought another 205er. Completely no impact on the division whatsoever, and I think Vittori should have had a chance to fight a 185er.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
To actually help him, because now Paulo Costa's completely thrown off Vittori's progression in that division because he's fighting at catch weight, essentially not even a catch weight. He ended up fighting at 205. It screws up the whole thing for Vittori. That's a huge. The
I don't
UFC
think
put him in a
so.
hugely
I don't
in a
think it
very
screws up
compromised
his
position.
progression. I think because they're both
What if he
middleweights.
loses?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So, well, here's the thing. If he loses,
even
I still don't think it hurts him that much because he can say, like, listen, I took the fight, even though Costa did all this bullshit. I took the fight anyway, and yeah, I came up short, but I was fighting a guy who outweighed me in there and who basically cheated. So I think
but
there's a
you can
risk.
you can explain it, but once you have to explain it, you're still losing the PR game.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Well, it's not good.
for fans, they'll understand it, but for general public, oh, this guy lost his last fight. It's still UFC records are so short and careers are so short. It
Yeah,
should
that's
not have
true.
happened.
Yeah,
I think if
that's
Paulo
true.
Costa still was going to fight, it should have been another 205er, and Vittori should have fought someone else in the division.
That
With a week out,
yeah.
yeah, that could have absolutely happened, and that would have been fair. And you could have still, I'll review. He still owes 20% of his purse to Vittori because he couldn't get to the fight. Yeah, you can still fight, but you're fighting a 205er, and it's not going to help you at all.
Yeah, I mean,
Vittori's still going to fight someone, and he's
that makes
also
sense.
going to get 20% of your purse.
I
That would have
don't
been
disagree.
UFC doing right by the fighters.
I don't disagree in this specific circumstance because they're both ranked and all that other stuff. But if someone does miss, like, I'm thinking more specifically if someone can't make weight, because yes, this circumstance was special. I think Paulo Costa is a piece of shit. I think his team is a bunch of pieces of shits. They're all bad. So I think that they're all just horrible human beings gaming the system, trying to fucking cheat, taking a calculated risk, basically saying, I know we're going to miss weight, or I know we're not going to make weight, but a win is a win, and that's going to mean more than losing 20% of my purse right now because it gets me back to the title shot faster. So with that, I think this situation being that much different, what you said makes sense. Like having Costa fight some other random 205er and having Vettori fight a 185er makes more sense in this situation. Now, given, like, if someone does miss weight by a pound or 2 pounds and the other person still wants to accept the fight, I'm never, like, what I don't like, okay, so I do like giving the other fighter money, but I think on the table should be a discussion of points because that affects the actual fight, right?
Yep.
So you now have to fight at a deficit because you cheated, right? You're not fighting at a deficit if you don't cut weight or you miss weight and you just have to give the other person money. That's not a fight deficit to you. Yes, it's monetary and it sucks because someone else is, essentially getting your money. But if you win, then you get to go on to it's the same argument I've had for people who miss weight all the time. Like Yoel Romero was especially was egregious for this. Them having similar opponents in Paulo Costa, Yoel Romero fought before. It reminded me that he's missed weight a bunch of times, right? He missed weight for title fights, he missed weight, but he was never punished for missing weight other than not getting the belt. Right? He didn't lose ranking. He didn't get a point deduction that would have screwed him up for the fight. Like think about that in like the long-term ramifications. Like if you go to a decision and you're a point down, if it's a 3-round fight, the best circumstance you can have if you don't win all 3 rounds is a tie. Right? Cuz we're looking at a 29-28 if you lose if you lose 2 of those rounds. So you have to win. You have to win the fight outright. You have to win all 3 rounds, which I think is fair. That because you've essentially cheated.
Yes, I mean you have cheated.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I'm good with that, but I also think, especially for the people that habitually end up in that situation, there needs to be.
My mouse just died.
There should be either some talk or something coming from the athletic commission perspective for suspensions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Similar to how PED use leads to suspensions. So PED use, theoretically, you could apply a very similar case to, and you could probably set up an almost similar outcome. All right, going into the fight, if the person wants to accept the fight, they can accept it. You'll have the point deficit, but then your case goes to the athletic commission. They get to decide, all right, based on the circumstances of this, whatever the cause was of that person coming in, either overweight or for PD use, they can prescribe either this suspension or whatever punishment from the athletic commission. It looks like Brennan is having mic issues. Oh boy.
Wait, what?
I said it looks like Brennan is having mic issues. Oh boy.
No, not mic issues. My mouse died. I gotta plug it in. Hold on.
Oh, that's funny. But yeah, I just think this whole situation was, Paul Costa screwed up, but I think we cannot emphasize enough how badly the UFC screwed up in what they did against Marvin Vittori and the situation they put him in, because they did not look out for his best interest in any way. And his team was, he was asked about the post-fight press conference, if anyone in his team voiced that, hey, maybe you shouldn't do it. And his answer was no, because no one in my team would ever try and talk me out of a fight. All right. That's great for him, but he's still in that position where he has to say that. He's still in that position where he has to maintain that level of being game, that PR perspective of, I'm always game, I'm always ready to fight, because no one's interested in a fighter that is saying, no, he didn't quite come in the way that he should have, so I don't want to fight him. I'll fight someone else, or, I want to put off that fight. No, that never comes across looking good for the fighter, no matter how justified they are.
Wait, who are you talking about?
I was just talking about the post-fight press conference. Vittori was asked directly about it, if anyone on his team had voiced that maybe he shouldn't do it, and his answer was no, because no one on my team would ever try and talk me out of a fight, because they know me. And that's the exact reason why this should have been on the UFC to make this call, and the UFC to make this decision to protect his interests, because from that PR perspective, a fighter can never go, I thought about it, or I had to weigh it, or, because of these rules, I didn't really want to do this. Like, anytime you're made to look like you're not game for the business, it hurts you.
There we go. I fixed it. Yeah. I just had the stats up, but so if we look here, first of all, I love Vittori's tattoo. Always have. I think he has some really cool artwork on his chest going over to his arm. Anyway, Costa started to open up with really big leg kicks. Vettori was much more successful when he was being the aggressor. And then what was weird was Costa started looking tired with 2 minutes left in the first round, but then he just carried that exhaustion through the whole fight. So,
the eye poke helped. Except for the points.
Yes. I have that. Costa with an eye poke and then hangs out in front of his corner, and he did get a point deduction.
Good on Herzog.
Which is rightfully so. Makes sense, finally. And then Costa did one of my big pet peeves during the whole fight, which is constantly shaking his head and putting his hands up like, nah, that didn't hurt. Nah, that didn't hurt. Okay, well, let's look at the stats here, shall we? 39-35, 40-36, 31-17, 49-30, and then in the last round he did outland him. But if you look at the stats, he lost every single round with significant strikes. And you can argue that they were both hitting pretty hard. So maybe Costa's were slightly more significant, but I would argue that they weren't. And in the round where they were the most significant, which was round 2, is where he got the point deduction.
For the blatant,
the really bad eye poke.
Eye poke.
Yeah.
Pulling him into an eye poke. And then even throwing that similar type of move out a couple more times in the fight and just barely missing him, which, that was another reason why I literally texted you during, I'm furious at this fight. Just
yeah, in the third round, Costa ended up getting a takedown, but then attempts like this bullshit guillotine. Vittori is actually pretty good on the ground. He's pretty good on the ground. So, he goes for this BS guillotine, which doesn't lead to anywhere, and he actually loses position, and Vittori gets on top. So, Vittori did not go for a wrestle heavy a wrestle-heavy approach, which a lot of people thought he would. He did keep it on the feet pretty much the whole time. It seemed like if he did want to wrestle, he could have. He did get a takedown here and there. I think Vittori is just a better fighter altogether. I don't think there's a version of Paulo Costa in there who beats Vettori, and based off what I saw as far as his chin goes, I don't think anybody is knocking him out without, some ungodly circumstance or power.
And for the people complimenting Costa's cardio, this happened at 205.
He didn't cut weight.
The amount of added glucose energy, the amount of body stores that he still had in his system that he never has at 185. Yeah, it should not be surprising that he had a bare gas tank.
A lot of people think, and a lot of the commentators always mention, like, hey, you're carrying around that extra weight, that extra muscle. I would say I would agree if this was a Kevin Lee, Rafael dos Anjos, Paul Felder type of situation where I'm taking a fight at a higher weight class knowing that I don't cut all camp, right? And I pack on even more muscle, or I pack on even more and then cut to that higher weight class. So, or your Conor McGregor's, right? And we've seen it in the past. What happens is your body takes a long time to reach homeostasis, right? For those of you guys who don't know what that means, it just means levelness or even, like hitting an equilibrium, making sure that your body runs at a normal level when it comes to changing your weight. Right, we're talking 3 months minimum to hit like an actual homeostasis for small changes, and for most big changes, we're talking like 10 pounds or more of muscle increased mass in general to maintain that. It's gonna probably take at least a year, maybe even longer, especially for these athletes who are like highly tuned with their body, like highly in tune with their body, and use it for very specific purposes, like. It's going to take a very long time for it to recover. Now, I mentioned all that, and I went into detail there because this is not that situation, right?
This is
a
his
guy
natural weight.
Yeah, this is a guy who
this is
walks
the weight
around
he's training
like this
at throughout camp. Yeah.
Right? Yeah, he walks around like this. He didn't do shit to cut weight. He didn't do anything. He probably Here's the thing: the guy's also obviously on PEDs. I mean, this is not like maybe Vittori is too. I don't care. Like, I'm just mentioning it because it's like, it's just one of those things where if you want to say, hey, oh, look at his cardio, he might be on EPO too, which I think, I don't think as many fighters are on. This is all anecdotal, by the way, just hearing from fighters how they talk about things. I don't think EPO is as rampant, but many fighters have popped for it, the latest of which being TJ Dillashaw. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that a guy who lives in Brazil and can disappear in Brazil for a while can do drugs. I mean, look, we talked about it last week. That chick, I don't know if you watched them, but there's a chick with bigger traps than mine at weighs like 150, that fights at 125 pounds. Dude, her traps and her shoulders look better than mine do. And you're saying, and like, you might be saying to yourself, like, oh, well, okay, just because one girl's stronger than you, you're going to like get like emasculated, you feel like threatened. No, I'm just telling you, that's not normal. That is not a natural thing. So, knowing that there's fighters on the roster who are clearly still using stuff, just goes to prove the point that, like, his cardio might not be natural either, right? And with the fact that he's always had this cardio and always looked like he has since he's been in the UFC. I mean, the dude has giant biceps, which is not a functional muscle when it comes to grappling. Right, most of your grappling and fighting is not going to involve your minor muscles like that. Like, yeah, it might help you a little bit with a guillotine or certain movements, but biceps are incredibly weak. It's a show muscle.
Well, and for me, just the point, regardless of if he's on performance enhancing or not, when you're actually at your natural weight, and he was not super active. This is a guy that's throwing small bursts of power punches, high kicks.
I mean, he did throw 260 significant strikes.
He wasn't throwing combos and wrestling the way that Vittori does.
Yeah, he wasn't, and he was always moving backwards too.
Yeah. And he's also at his natural weight, which is the big key thing there. Like when you're at your natural weight and you have the energy stores that you normally would never have when you're fighting on fight night, it's going to be different. It's going to be vastly different.
You know what? I'm trying to find a picture of him at 2 different weight classes. So one of the things is this being at middleweight to light heavyweight is much different than at the lower weight classes because there's a 20-pound difference. 20 pounds. Like, that's a huge, huge weight cut.
Yes.
So I tend to agree. I think this was a real shit move by him and his team. I think it was planned out from a long time ago, and I'm glad he fucking lost. What do you think's next for Vettori? So the people who were ranked above him before this weekend were Brunson, Cannonier, Costa, and Whitaker. I think Costa should be dropped.
Yeah, I would just take him off that list because if he fights at 185 again, it's a crime against Vittori and the rest of the 185ers because that just lets him get away with cheating.
Yeah, I don't know how you do this and outright just be like, I'm not making the weight.
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy. So we got some people he hasn't fought yet. He hasn't fought Derek Brunson, hasn't fought Jared Cannonier, and obviously hasn't fought Robert Whitaker. Whitaker is fighting Adesanya. Cannonier is fighting Brunson. And then Sean Strickland was supposed to fight. Sean Strickland is ranked 7 right now, so he's supposed to fight. He was supposed to fight. God dang it! Who's the guy who was the champ at 185 and then got knocked out by Bisping? Luke Rockhold.
Luke Rockhold. Yeah.
Anyway, he was supposed to fight Rockhold, but injury had them pulling out of that fight. So, I mean, for me, I would have him fight Derek Brunson. I think that's probably the next move, or either maybe the loser of Whitaker Adesanya.
Has he fought Darren Till?
No, but Till just had a loss.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, in the interim, because it seems like everyone's kind of got a dance partner right now. Like, it would be a good setup for him, just on that pathway back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's supposed to fight Cannonier in January.
Till is?
No, Derek Brunson.
Derek Brunson,
Till,
yeah.
I don't think Till's matched up with anybody yet.
Yeah, you got... When is Whitaker fighting Adesanya again?
I don't know. Next month? No. Yeah, it's got to be before the end of the year,
yeah,
right?
see, that's why I would say him versus Darren Till would be a good interim, just to keep him active. Still a well-respected, well-ranked fighter.
Oh,
yeah.
Wait a minute. It's not scheduled.
And it's still...
It's not scheduled yet. Maybe for February.
Because I'm guessing the winner of Cannonier Derek Brunson is going to be the next fight against Izzy.
Or Whitaker.
I mean, after Whitaker, I'm guessing.
Oh. Well, what if Whitaker wins?
Fine. Whoever wins Cannonier Brunson is going to be the next title shot. Although if Whitaker wins, Izzy's going to get an
immediate rematch. Yeah.
Which comes it all up. So that feeds even better into my point of Darren Till, Marvin. And that'll be a fun fight, too.
I mean, it's a fun fight. I just don't see why Marvin would take that fight. That makes no sense to me. I mean, us on the outside just wanting to see fights, it's cool, but I don't like him versus Marvin Vettori versus Sean Strickland makes sense. He's already fought Jack Hermanson and won that fight.
I mean, you could say he could face the loser of Cannonier Brunson. Or honestly, or he could fight the...
That's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not until January, so it doesn't really line up. But, I mean, if he's willing to sit out for an additional 3 months, I agree. That's not bad. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so in the co-main event, we had a lackluster outcome because there was a draw. Grant Dawson versus Ricky Glenn. Dawson, very good at takedowns, very good at wrestling. Worked really hard to get his first takedown around 60 seconds in. Dawson on the back with the body triangle for the last 2 minutes of the first round. Dawson just kept going for takedowns over and over again, getting him.
Yeah.
Glenn was able to defend on top, and then Dawson got super, super tired. So Dawson ended up surviving the last round. But all three judges gave him, or no, two of the judges gave him a 10-8 for that last round. So
Yep.
we ended up getting a majority draw. The dissenting judge did give it 29-28 to Dawson, which I was okay with. I wasn't against the draw.
No, I think that was a fair draw, point-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how close. I mean, I guess he was close to a finish, so not mad at a 10-8 round for that last one. If you want to look at the stats, here we go. You can see there, 16-4 in the first, 7-1 in the second, and then 1-23. And then if you look at the takedowns, there's the big difference: 3 of 11, and the control time of over 8.5 minutes, and all that control time for Glenn came in the last round. So 4.5 minutes of that last round. All right, let's see.
Next fight was awesome.
What, Jessica Rose Clark versus Jocelyne Edwards?
Nope, I'm looking at them out of order. Never mind.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know. So Jessica Rose Clark, coming off a layoff, like a 1.5-year layoff, known for her striking. She got some easy fence pressure early on. I'll throw these up here. So got some easy fence pressure early on, managed to get a takedown pretty early. So lack of enough activity forces them to stand back up multiple times, and then Edwards with a flurry to try and get the round back, but got taken down with 20 seconds left. And that was the story of the fight. Clark kept getting takedowns, and Edwards wasn't able to stop it. Edwards seemed like she was the more powerful, accurate striker in distance, and then when they clinched up, just she couldn't stay on her feet. This was not the most exciting fight for a lot of people, and it's at bantamweight. So
it wasn't a bad fight, but I mean, it was not as exciting as the previous fight. It's a hard one to follow.
No, and if we're looking for someone to beat Amanda Nunes, neither one of these ladies is it, unfortunately for them. Oh, no. Hold on. I think there was one note that I had on this one. Was it this one? No, it wasn't. It was another one. Okay.
All right.
Next fight. Alex Caceres? Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Alex Caceres.
I love listening to myself. Just listen to Michael Bisping during this fight because it's hilarious, and you'd think Alex Caceres just had him in his ear. He's like, oh, that's a good idea. I should do that.
Yeah, he so Alex was like a more, I would say, more active striker, but not he wasn't throwing like the most accurate strikes. He was getting kind of oh yeah, there. He didn't get outstruck in the first round, but it seemed like the bigger, more effective strikes were coming from Choi. Choi was throwing big shots.
Choi was very accurate, and he was hitting him clean when he was throwing shots. That was the big thing for me.
Yeah, Caceres was able to like smoothly avoid a lot of them early on, but then Choi caught him with a big right hand and put him down. Yeah. And then obviously we had, Caceres was down on the ground. His knee was still down, and Choi threw a big knee to Caceres' head, and, it cost him a point, rightfully so. And then because of that, the rest of that round kind of went it kind of went to Caceres. It doesn't matter. He lost a point.
Yeah.
And then Alex was kind of having issues navigating distance, not navigating distance, but working his way in. If you go back and watch the fight, he has a problem. He was having problems trying to find an entry. Like he couldn't find a smooth way in, and how he ended up winning was Choi making a mistake. Choi moves in, throws a big looping hook. He ducks under, circles around, gets the back, hops on his back, puts the body triangle in, and then works for the rear naked choke.
After he'd gotten
pretty
clipped
freaking
and
cool.
seemingly hurt again, because he about like a minute and a half before that, in the second round, he took another hard shot, and I think that was when he transitioned his game plan in his head to, all right, I'm not gonna sit in here and play this game of trying to find my way in and out volume this guy, because he got clipped again in that round.
It was pretty cool, actually. Let's see if they have pictures of it. Oh, they don't. But anyway, it was pretty cool seeing him kind of like work through adversity and find his way back, literally finding his way to his back, hopping on like a backpack and working the rear naked choke in. That was pretty darn cool. So Caceres, currently not ranked. I don't at featherweight. I know there's a lot of people there, and I don't necessarily think he belongs in the rankings. I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean I don't think he's earned his way in there. So I wouldn't mind seeing him fight somebody in the top 15 again, like Ilya Topuria, Shane Burgos, Mofsar Ivloyev, maybe not. Sodiq Yusuf, probably not, and that's too high. So seeing him take on someone in the top 15, maybe, but
It's in Barbosa. Might not be a bad one.
That would be a fun fight. You could really see where Caceres is at, to be honest.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
He's also not an old fighter.
No, like Barbosa still has juice in him, but it would definitely be a good test of do you belong.
No, I meant Caceres. Caceres is only 33. Like he's 50. He's 19-12, and it sucks because that's why I want to move up. He is in a 5-fight win streak. Steven Peterson, Chase Hooper, Austin Springer, Kevin Kroom. Obviously, not a lot of well-known names. Not a lot of people in the top. Nobody in the top 15 or anything like that. But
winning 5 fights in a row in MMA is hard in general. Almost doesn't matter who you're fighting. Like that, and especially at that weight class.
Dude, he's been fighting in the UFC since 2011. That's crazy to think. Like 10 years ago. Yeah, that makes sense. I remember seeing him fight back then, and he was in his early 20s, and he was like this crazy young kid.
A couple years ago, was it against Brian Ortega when
Yair Rodriguez?
No, I thought Alex Caceres fought Brian Ortega a couple years ago and had.
I don't think so.
I don't know what I'm thinking of then.
He fought Yair Rodriguez.
Yeah, I wonder if I'm thinking of someone else.
He fought Crone Gracie in 2019.
I just must be thinking of someone completely different.
And he has a win over Sergio Pettis, who is a champ in Bellator. So, anyway. All right. Moving on. Let's see. Dwight Grant versus Francisco Trinaldo. This was an interesting fight. So, more because of the decision and also what happened in there. So, and pull this up for you guys. So, Francisco Trinaldo outstruck him in the second and third rounds. Kind of landed the bigger shots in the first round, too, so I probably would have given him that round. The thing is, Grant kept reaching with his jabs and hooks, throwing with bigger power, but he just kept reaching, and Trinaldo landed some big shots, big lefts a few times, and Trinaldo was always moving forward, which, as we've seen in the last couple of years, really weighs heavily on the judges' scorecards.
Oh, yes.
So, Trinaldo got an eye poke that he got a point taken away, so he was warned a few times about his fingers. Never had another point. He never got a warning for poking him in the eye. He just got the position of his fingers, right? By the way, guys, fingers up is a stupid rule. Okay? Like, fingers to the sky, fingers to the ceiling. That's fucking dumb. Fix the gloves. It's an easy answer. Fix the goddamn gloves. All right? Like, fingers up. Nobody reaches out like this. You reach out either like that or like this. Like, you're never gonna reach up towards the sky. And even when you do, if you move your hand down and they move down to throw a punch, they're gonna get poked in the eye anyway, which is a rule violation. It's fucking dumb. Fix the gloves. All right. So anyway, he gets a point deducted from him. He gets a point
Would
deducted.
it make more sense to say fingers to the floor? Just because of the shape of I'm just saying.
That's a funny look.
Like, I mean, like, it just forces you to basically have a fist, like
fingers to the floor,
or at least like
fingers to the floor. You know what? I don't hate it.
Yeah,
I don't hate it. Let's see. I didn't know if there was enough urgency in that last round. But Francisco and Trinaldo ended up getting the decision. I do have a problem though. Saul D'Amato gave it 29-27 to Dwight Grant. That don't make no sense. It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. Saul D'Amato's made a lot of mistakes, and he's often one of those guys who pops up when talking about bad decisions. He's one of those guys. Kind of like Adelaide Bird. We know these people because of their bad decision making. All right. Negomarianu versus Ike.
old-fashioned KO. Light heavyweight
Villanueva. No reason to look at the stats here. Light heavyweight. Threw a big punch, put him down on the ground, and then landed 5 shots to the back of the head to cause a stoppage. There is some controversy over that. I'm not a fan of it. I think I don't like giving leeway when it comes to the rules, because then it's subjective and not objective, and I think it's a bunch of baloney. All right, this fight was fun. Gregory Rodriguez versus Jung Park. So this one was back and forth. It was a lot of fun. Park was having some problems early, getting outpointed, but landed some big shots of his own. Rodriguez ends up rocking Park and getting his back and putting him in a body triangle and keeping him there for a majority of the first round. And in the second round, Rodriguez was just exhausted, and Park was able to do some work. But then Park, landed a few big shots of his own, but then also got tired. So what we ended up seeing was kind of like sloppy, who's going to land the big shot that makes the other guy kind of like fall backwards. And Rodriguez landed the bigger shot. Park falls down on his butt, and the fight gets called off. Not because I feel like he was really knocked out, just because like he was exhausted, and I don't think he was getting back up fast enough anyway.
It was over.
Yeah, I think Park moved in too close in those exchanges when he had Rodriguez. This is armchair quarterbacking, I know, but I feel like if he kept his distance a little bit better, he wouldn't have got engaged in those grappling exchanges, and I think he could have gotten the stoppage. Park really could have won that fight. He had it. All he had to do was keep his distance and throw a couple more punches, and I think the fight would have been stopped in the other direction. So kind of a loss for Park. Mason Jones versus David Onama. Supposed to be Mason Jones' coming out party because he's had a bunch of chances in the UFC. And he's had some disappointing outings. First round was very close, but he got some more takedowns. Second round is a little bit better for Onama as Jones started to get tired, and then the same in the third. What's really weird is how close the striking numbers are. 30-30, 35-35, or 33-35, and then 24-25. So they're very close. But go back and watch a fight. Mason Jones just outright gasses in the third round, I thought he was kind of just getting beaten up pretty bad, and it obviously wasn't enough to call it a 10-8 in the last round. Thank God, because I don't think it warranted it, and we don't get a draw. So Mason Jones finally gets that win that he was looking for. after his loss to Mike Davis and his no contest to Alan Patrick because of the eye poke. So, all right. Let's see who else we got here. Richie versus Oliveira. Tabitha Ricci, that is. She's like a worse version of Tisha Torres, both size-wise and fighting style. Like, she's not a smooth striker. She's not as good as her at all. About the same size, though. Jamie Pickett versus Laureano Staropoli. Wait a minute. Pickett won that fight? Oh, yeah. Pickett outstruck him. That's why he won that
Don't
fight.
look at me. You're in the weeds now. You've lost me.
Yeah, Pickett won that one. Pickett's got some separation, blah, 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 blah. That one wasn't that interesting anyway. Kama Worthy versus Jai Herbert. Herbert was much better at landing clean strikes. I do recommend going back and watch that fight. It was fun. Herbert gets the KO. He lands a big right hand and then throws a nice barrage, landing like 5 shots directly to the head and stopping Kama Worthy. So that was pretty interesting. It's like really good striking. That's a fun one to watch. Let's see, Jeff Molina versus Daniel De Silva. What happened in that one? Oh, yeah, Silva started the fight really strong and ended up making a lot of mistakes. And getting caught by Jeff Molina. Jeff Molina gets the TKO finish. I think it was in the second round. Yeah, he got the TKO finish in the second round. Hold on. Yeah, this is actually one I wanted to talk about. So, if you know who Randa Marcos is, she took on Lavina Souza. Randa Marcos was on one of the Ultimate Fighters, like season 19 or something. It was one of the few ones that I watched. It was the strawweights. So if you look here, I have said before about Randa Marcos being like not a young fighter and how she was outside the top 15. And if you look at her record, she has a lot of losses in the UFC. In fact, she was on a 4-fight losing streak to Amanda Hebos, Mackenzie Dern, Kanako Muramata, and Luana Pinheiro. So she wasn't doing so hot coming into this fight. And even before then, she was a win-lose fighter anyway. Okay? You know, she's got wins over Ashley Yoder. She did win against Angela Hill back in the day, back in 2019. You know, but she's always traded wins and losses. She's never had 2 wins in a row in the UFC. Okay? And because of that, I've always said that she's like after these four losses here, like she might have been cut. I think she probably could have been cut based off what I saw. Like she just doesn't belong in the UFC based off what I saw. Like she's with TriStar now and she's doing really good stuff. And I thought she looked okay, but she was never doing anything that much better to where I thought she belonged in here. Meanwhile, she comes out in this fight, guns blazing, going for takedowns, throwing caution to the wind, throwing big punches, landing stuff. Dude, she could have had the finish in the 3rd round, too. I thought she could have had the finish with the barrage that she was putting on her. I was wrong. I'll eat my words. She made improvements. She did something I didn't think she could do at her age, you know, being kind of set in stone in who you are as a person, athletically, mentally, as a fighter, all that stuff. And I was wrong. So I don't take back what I said as far as her being a challenger to the title because I don't think she ever will be. I could be proven wrong as far as that goes, but I think that based off that performance, she definitely belongs in the UFC still, and I'm glad she got the win the way she did. That was really cool.
Woo-hoo.
First fight on the card, Martinez versus Lazishvili. It was like a fun bantamweight fight to watch. Lots of striking. Jonathan Martinez just outstruck him. So good on him. This is a fun fight. I recommend it.
Yeah.
That's
in
all.
Other news.
Those are all the fights from this weekend. So let's get to some cool stuff. So do you remember who Fedor Emelianenko is?
I do. He was this dude that used to... Yeah. Didn't he used to fight in Pride? Something like that?
Like a gay
like
thing?
a million years ago. I might have to Google that one. I'm not sure.
So I don't know Fedor Emelianenko. I don't know. Everybody tells me he's like this like really good fighter or something, and all I've seen is like this chubby guy who loses all the time. So, obviously I'm being an idiot. We know who Fedor Emelianenko is. He's probably the greatest heavyweight of all time. Daniel Cormier and Stipe Miocic can eat my shorts. I listen. Well, the reason I mentioned DC is because DC was talking shit like on Twitter this week, saying like, "Oh, if Fedor was fighting in the UFC instead of Pride, he would have been like a middling fighter. He never would have gotten the belt." Yeah,
All right.
get the fuck out of here, dude. Like, maybe he wouldn't have the pristine record that he had, which I will pull up for you right now. So this loss here, this Soyoshi Kosaka loss was actually due to a cut. It was not a real loss, so take that off the books. He won. Yeah, you see all that green there, guys? You see all that green? 32.
It's some beautiful green.
It should be 31 fights in a row. He should have won. Okay? 31 fights. And I really wish I went to this one, this Strikeforce Fedor versus Rogers, because it was in Hoffman Estates, and I should have went, but I didn't. Obviously, famously, he lost to Fabricio Verdum and Antonio Bigfoot Silva when Silva was on all of the juice, and then got knocked out by Dan Henderson.
And let's remind people, once upon a time, Fabricio was in the runnings for
greatest heavyweight of all time.
Best of all time.
Yes.
Yeah. Like at his peak, people considered him in that talk.
Right. We're talking Fabricio Verdum beat, obviously, Fedor at the end of his streak. He ended the win streak of Fedor. He beat Cain Velasquez. He beat, who else did he beat? Oh, Mark Hunt. He beat actually, when he came back to the UFC, he beat everyone, became the champion, and then ended up getting knocked out by Stipe.
Yeah.
Right? Like, during the time when he was champion, he was being talked about as the greatest heavyweight of all time. Like, he had to be in the discussion.
Beat Travis Brown twice when Travis Brown was scary.
Right. Yeah, he did. He smoked
beat Nogueira.
Yep. Yeah. And then he 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then he beats 5, like, pretty much nobodies, and then that Fabio Maldonado fight he shouldn't have won. We're talking about Fedor again.
Yeah.
Then he comes over to the Bellator, right? And we see that he takes on Matt Mitrione, and they both, like...
In one of the craziest knockouts ever. And it was literally, they both knocked each other out, and the first one up won.
Right. And that happened to be Matt Mitrione. So what happened was they both throw right hands, land on each other. They both fall backwards in that almost like that famous dual knockout. Those guys who almost look like twins, right? And they both knock each other out in that famous like old MMA video. It looked like that, where these two big heavyweights come together, slam right hands, both fall down, and then Matt Mitrione just happens to get his wits about him first, and then hops up and lands a couple punches.
A couple hammer fists.
Yep, and that's the end of it. But let's go back and look and see what's happened in the past 3 years, shall we? Knocks out Frank Mir. I understand Frank Mir isn't what he used to be, but he's still winning.
That was in Rosemont, Illinois, and you missed it too.
I know. That one is one where I actively said I was going to go to, and I'm very mad at myself for not going because I had an opportunity. I don't think I was out of town for work, and I'm pretty pissed off at myself because I could have gone to see him. So then he fought Chael Sonnen and knocked him out. Lost to Ryan Bader. I don't think there's any shame there. Ryan Bader did become the heavyweight champ in Bellator, even though he's kind of on a losing skid now, but it is what it is. Then he knocks out Rampage Jackson, and then recently this weekend knocking out Timothy Johnson, who is the number 3 ranked heavyweight in Bellator, number 3 or 4 ranked heavyweight in Bellator. His record is now 40-6.
As a heavyweight.
I understand that he didn't fight the greatest competition in Pride. I understand that some of the people he beat up probably belonged on the couch. I get that. Or doing dishes in the back in the cafeteria. I understand that. It's just the longevity of his career, the ability that he's had to just... Because Timothy Johnson, like, I understand he's not necessarily a world beater, and he used to be in the UFC, but he's looked really good in Bellator. Like, he shut out, like, I think he shut out Czech Congo, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Yeah, he got a split decision over Chet Congo. He beat Matt Mitrione. He knocked out Matt Mitrione, got a decision over Chet Congo, and then he lost a decision to Moldavsky. But anyway, that was for the interim heavyweight championship, so he could have been the champ. So Fedor beating him at this time in Timothy Johnson's career, because of how heavyweights age, Timothy Johnson isn't the best fighter in the world, but he's only 36. He's not super old for a heavyweight. Dude, Fedor, is he 43? How old is he? He's 45, guys.
Yeah. He's 145 in fight years.
And he's 6 foot tall, 233 chubby. We've seen him.
He's been doing this since 2000.
And on the professional level, he's been fighting as a heavyweight since the year 2000.
Yeah, and also mixed in with all of the, dishwashers were Nogueiras.
Oh yeah,
multiple times.
Yes.
Prokop, Mark Coleman, Mark Hunt, Arlovsky, Silva when they were back in their heyday. Like he also beat some crazy
Kevin
names.
Randleman, if we remember that fight where he got dropped, like suplexed, not even suplexed, he got power bombed into oblivion and then gets up and wins the fight against Kevin Randleman, which was incredible. Beat Gary Goodrich back in the... So if you're just coming into MMA now, I totally understand if you don't know who we're talking about, but if you do happen to go back and you have UFC Fight Pass or whatever, access maybe to whatever you want to do, you can go back and watch some of these fights. Dude, Gary Goodrich was a legit pioneer in MMA, and he was a real fighter back then. And we're talking back in 2003 when Gary Goodrich was a fucking monster, right? And he knocked him out. Kazuyuki Fujita was the guy who famously rocked Fedor. He's the one who rocked him, and then Fedor was on wobbly legs, but still managed to get his wits about him and flip Fujita and got a rear naked choke. He beat Nogueira. He beat Heath Herring, the Texas Crazy Horse. Obviously, again, if you don't know who these people are, I understand, but he was no joke. He was like a legit fighter. Semi Schilt, who's this fucking 6'9" kickboxer. God, Hanato Sobral, Babalu, Ricardo Arona. I understand Arona's not the biggest fighter, but Arona also could have been the champ in Pride if he didn't get slammed on his head famously by Rampage Jackson. And dude, there are names littered throughout here that are like some world beaters. Like you said, Mark Hunt, Matt Lindland,
Krokop in Pride in his prime,
Hong Man Choi, the 7'1" fighter, Tim Sylvia, Brett Rogers, that's whatever. Dude, Pedro Hizzo, but that one's not a good one because Pedro Hizzo.
Just my point is, for him to still be doing it and still winning against up and coming
anybody
fighter that may never be at his level, but still fighters in a prime is crazy.
Yeah, dude, he's
in year 22 of his career.
There is no argument. Like, we're not talking about UFC heavyweights here. Obviously, he never fought in the UFC. When the UFC bought Pride, they found out that the contracts were baloney, and they didn't get any of the fighters, so they had to come up with new contracts for the fighters anyway. And one of the fighters who most famously did not come over to the UFC was Fedor. Fedor went to Strikeforce, but he wanted to come over to the UFC, and he said, hey, I have this organization that I run called M1 Global, that he's a part owner of or part proprietor or whatever. And M1 Global is like this Russian run like organization. I don't think it's like as devious or mischievous or anything. I think, but they wanted to be like partners with the UFC, essentially getting Fedor a piece of the UFC. And then Dana White and the Fertitta brothers were like, no. So then he was like, okay.
Fertitta brothers don't cut pieces of the pie.
Yeah, so they're like, okay.
Especially back in those days.
Go on and get with that. And then Fedor was like, okay, I'll fight for Strikeforce. And then he fought for Strikeforce and then eventually found his way back to fighting and then came over to Bellator. So
And for
This,
people that don't remember, kind of in the same time frame, you had Randy Couture.
oh
In like the
yeah,
heyday of
dude,
his
we never
career,
got that fight.
I know, just begging the UFC. Randy Couture prior to the Brock Lesnar knockout for probably 4 years, an absolute like staple UFC champion
At the age of
between light
45.
heavyweight, I know, and heavyweight, begging the UFC to put this together. And it was, I mean, that not happening was, you know, for UFC fans equivalent to Mayweather and Pacquiao not happening in their prime. Like,
I would say it's worse.
and it's worse because they never fought. Period.
Yeah, because I mean, also
There
because
was,
boxing's boxing.
yeah.
They usually
But
in
like
MMA we
that
get
was
what we want.
that was a devastating fight to never happen to UFC fans who grew up in the early 2000s and mid 2000s watching and wanting that fight to happen because that was huge.
Yeah, I'm. It's interesting to look back at his career because I didn't think I'd be doing that today. Like it's incredible. It really
Yeah.
is. Like and like I said, we're not talking about UFC heavyweights here. We're talking about heavyweights, greatest of all time, and I don't think there's an argument. Like I think
No.
you maybe could have made that argument if Stipe Miocic kept his win streak going. Maybe eventually if Stipe does get the belt back and then wins like three or four more fights, I think you can make that argument. If Ngannou goes on like a 10-fight win streak in the UFC, I think you might be able to make that argument, but I argue that I still don't think that's possible. Dude, it's just
Honestly, my argument's going to be if Fedor had ended his career back in 2012 and hadn't kept it going, because he had the long layoff from 2012 to 2015,
yeah.
and then he kind
He
of came back into
yeah.
it. If it had ended there, it might be a little bit more of an argument towards Stipe. But the fact that he kept going and has kept fighting and is still putting together win streaks at his age.
And highlights, dude. He's
I
finishing
know.
people.
Yeah, like that. For me, that's kind of the, all right, yeah, I got to give it to Fedor because you got the longevity aspect too.
It's
He's still
unbelievable.
killing the game at his age.
Unbelievable watching them fight. Watching him still fight at this age. Like Fedor was the myth, when I was a kid. We heard about Fedor because, he didn't fight in the UFC, so you had to go like roundabout ways. So you had to get like bootleg DVDs or download Pride to go see him fight. You couldn't just go to your local bar and watch an event to see him fight. So he was like this myth, this legend that we never got to see. And I thought I missed it. For me, I thought like, oh, I missed it. Like I'm never gonna get to watch him fight live. Lo and behold, I'm a fan in 2021 still, and I get to see him fight. And he's knocking people out. Like, yeah, it doesn't look like Fedor of old, but dude, he's still got the wherewithal. Yes, he doesn't have the heavyweight chin anymore. I understand that, but the dude can still throw. He's still as smart as ever, and dude, he's still fast. He's still fast.
Still athletic.
Incredible. One more thing I did want to talk about before. So if you look at pictures of this guy, Mariusz Pudzianowski. Mariusz Pudzianowski, former. This picture you hear over on the right that we're seeing against Bombardier. So if you look at him, like that's obviously not what Pudzianowski looks like now. This is what he looks like now. But that picture of him is when he was the world's strongest man, like world's strongest man, period. Like he was a competitor, but he was the world's strongest man for a long period of time. And then, he came over and people started making fun of him and stuff. I get that, and I understand the trepidation with a strongman competitor coming over and saying like, oh, that's why you got tired. Oh, look how heavy he is, blah, 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 blah. I know this because I'm a world's strongest man aficionado and kind of a nerd. Go back and watch when he first started competing in World's Strongest Man. He was a Golden Gloves boxer in Poland. Yes, I know that doesn't mean he's a world-class champion boxer. I know that doesn't mean he's an Olympian, but he does know how to throw his hands.
I, I also think people don't realize how much cardio is involved in World's Strongest Man.
Well,
Like it's
especially when you don't weigh that much anymore.
well, and it's not a powerlifting competition like it
Yeah,
is a
you
combination
have
of
to
moving
run.
heavy things and
Yeah.
being able to maintain a cardiovascular system to beat someone, often in time competitions. Like World's Strongest Man is, it will surprise you how cardio intensive it is.
Yeah. And Pujanowski knocked this guy out, Bombardier
Yeah,
out. He's one of those wrestlers from Africa. I forget what country it is. What's the one that starts with an S?
Senegal.
Senegal.
Yeah, they have a huge, like somewhat natively adapt wrestling competition scene there.
Senegalese wrestling. If you go and
Yeah,
look it up, there's some big guys over there, like these monsters wrestling, and you know, uh, probably about 2-3 years ago, you started seeing pictures like thrown around on the internet, and being like, oh, wait till these guys get to the UFC, this and that. Like we've seen them in ONE FC, and we've seen them in KSW, and we've seen them elsewhere. Uh, Whatever it is about that wrestling style, whether it's just their size, the cardio, it does not translate to MMA inherently. Not saying that they can't be champions eventually or work their way up. Obviously, many different styles have made it their way into modern MMA, and Senegalese wrestling might do that eventually. It's just this whole thing where like they look at these physical monsters and they're like, just wait until they get their hands on like a UFC fighter. I don't know how people keep forgetting the lessons that we've learned from MMA. It's been going on for 30 fucking years now. Yes, you have your monsters. Yes, we have our Brock Lesnar's. We have our Francis Ngannou's. We have our, pick another physical freak, Bob Sapp back in the
yeah.
day, right?
Mark
Like
Coleman's.
your Mark Coleman's, your Mark Kerrs, right? We have these monsters who fit the bill as a world beater. Kevin Randleman, we mentioned him earlier. You've got these guys who look the part, and yeah, they're physically fit and all this. And if you looked at them and you're like, oh, I bet you that guy's can kick everyone's ass. And you'd be right in that specific circumstance. But just seeing large individuals who know how to do one thing doesn't mean they can win. We've seen it time and time again. Wrestlers come over, Olympic wrestlers, judo,
Well, I was
Greco-Roman,
gonna say, like,
boxers.
and not to downgrade Senegalese wrestling as a competition because it's wildly popular there.
Yeah,
But
and it
in
looks
terms of
fun. It looks
translation,
cool.
it also doesn't translate to the Olympics because I just went to look up to see, all right, from a pure wrestling standpoint, does it help them translate? And yeah, it absolutely does not seem to help.
No.
So if it's not helping translate into Olympic wrestling, it's probably going to be a struggle to translate that into a sport that is more complicated than
Right.
simply wrestling to Olympic wrestling.
We've seen a couple that are inherently really good at coming over. Obviously, we have Greco-Roman, freestyle, folk wrestling. All three of those are incredible bases for any. Like if you go and look at the history of MMA slash like the history of UFC champions, a majority of them have a wrestling background and are predominantly wrestling focused. It's just the way it is. Now there are other things that are allegories to that involve a lot of grappling. Judo, sambo, right? You know, you got your Nurmagomedov with sambo. You got your Fedor
Yep.
Emelianenko with sambo. You've got, I mean, hell, Arlovsky
But
has some sambo.
Russian wrestling obviously also translates into
Right.
Olympic wrestling
Yeah.
too. Like so there is a direct relationship and applicable. All right, this is translating into success in these different athletic fields.
Yes. Yeah, like Karelin, who was the champ, like the gold medalist in wrestling forever until he lost to Rulon Gardner, this big fat American dude. And it was like, I just don't understand how we haven't learned this lesson though. Like even like MMA fans and people who are, I would say, experienced MMA fans who can sort through most of the bullshit. Like that guy I'm about to mention, that guy at the bar, at the family party, at work, who's like, oh man, I bet you that guy could kick your ass, or I bet you that guy could. If he was in the UFC, he'd kick all their asses. Like, you know who I'm talking about. That's the most ignorant, low-level, lowest common denominator guy that we don't have a conversation with. There's no point in trying to educate him on what's going on. He's so out of the loop, it doesn't even matter. Okay? So there's a lot of people in between there, but I'm more even speaking to like people who are like really into MMA. Every time we see some giant dude come along who like has some skill, we're like, oh, this guy, everybody's in trouble. I say we collectively because I've been a little more trepidatious about it. Like I see someone like Francis Ngannou come along who's like big as a heavyweight and throwing big punches. I'm like, let's wait until he fights someone with cardio who can take him down. And what happened? Like he loses. He lost to Miocic. And then, rightfully so, he gets back up on his horse and after the Derek Lewis debacle, then he comes back and works really hard on his wrestling. And from what we've seen, his cardio looks okay so far. We got to wait until he goes to see if he ever makes it to the third round again. And, there's just this thing that as human beings, we just see a giant dude who looks athletic, and we're like, oh, that guy could kick his ass. Like, dude, the people know him as the Mountain from Game of Thrones, Hafthor Julius Bjornsson, who is a former world's strongest man, longtime competitor. I have fielded questions about him before. I bet you he could beat his ass. No, he couldn't. He would lose to everyone. There's video of him sparring with Conor McGregor, and yeah, if he got a hold of Conor McGregor, he could win. But guess what? He gets tired and he tells Conor no more, and they're having a fun sparring session. Conor McGregor was fighting at featherweight at the time, and he could beat his ass, and that's a 400-pound giant of a man. It's a skill set to be a world's strongest man. It's a skill set to be a fighter. They are not direct correlations. The Venn diagram has a couple overlapping qualities, but it does not mean you're going to be if you're good at one, you're going to be good at the other.
True facts.
Now, if you combine that with a history of fighting, being like a boxer, like a Golden Gloves boxer, and generally not being like the biggest, fattest guy, like Mariusz Pudzianowski was not a fat guy. He was always in shape. You end up with a guy who can throw fists and who's big and strong. And at heavyweight, he's fun. I mean, I've watched him fight at KSW. He's fun to watch.
And I'll argue you can take people that are young with credible and hate this word, proven athletic backgrounds. If they wanted to make that transition and move into fighting, there's probably a lot of them that could be successful. Not guaranteed champs, but like someone who's a high-level college basketball player doesn't go to the NBA and decides, all right, I'm going to go into this. After a couple of years, depending on what gyms they go to or where they're training, there's probably a good chance that that athleticism background and that work ethic and what they've trained towards previously is going to help them versus the layperson that was not just partying their way through high school and says, yeah, let me give this a shot. Like, there's definitely going to be something to that.
Look up Mariusz Pudzianowski's record. I got it next to you right now. It's hilarious. He's 16-7. Most of his fights have been in KSW. It's really funny. He did lose to Tim Sylvia back in 2010. But, like, look at the names on his record, like Butterbean, Bob Sapp, Sean McCorkle, Holes Gracie. These are a bunch of Polish fellows. Polish. But, yeah, dude, he's had a workman-like performance over there. I understand that it's not... This isn't the UFC. This isn't necessarily ONE FC. It's not Bellator. It's not PFL. So he's not fighting the best of the best. But this is a man who was...
I bet he's popular in Poland.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, he was the strongest man in the world for 5 years in a row, 6 years in a row, you name it. And now he's fighting. He's doing a completely different sport. And all things being considered, being 16-7-1... doing pretty good at it.
I would rather be the most popular fighter in Poland than a fucking nobody in the UFC.
Yeah, I bet you he does fine for himself. I bet you he gets tons of promotional, promotion, tons of like endorsements and money and everything. KSW does have legitimate fights. Like KSW is not some clown show,
Yeah.
This last one over this weekend was KSW 64. They've had 64 competitions at least, and dude, there's some extra former KSW guys who made it to the UFC.
And I think it is good and healthy when smaller competitions, like either smaller markets or more localized markets, like have fun names in them or getting headlines. Like just reminding people that those markets are out there and those organizations are out there and they have fun fighters and they have fun fights they're putting on.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it. I mean, do you have anything else?
Nothing crazy unless you talked about Conor McGregor Ferguson, that possibly happening?
Yeah, but they're also trying to put together Ferguson versus Diaz, and I'd honestly rather see that.
Fair enough.
I'm not opposed to seeing Conor McGregor versus Ferguson. I think that's a long time in the making, but I want to see Tony Ferguson take on somebody, maybe an up and comer or something. I want to see him get back on his feet. I want to see how he looks. That way, going forward, we can all agree on whether or not having him on your record as a win, it means anything, right? Because if you beat Cowboy Cerrone now, that doesn't mean much. If you beat him 10 years ago, that's a pretty big deal. It's the same thing.
That's a good point. I think beating Nate Diaz means more for Tony Ferguson's prospects of getting a championship fight than beating Conor McGregor.
Yeah, Conor's fun and all, and I'm sure he'll make more money and all that stuff. And I hope that fight does eventually happen. They talk so much shit for so many years, but what I really want to see is Tony Ferguson at his best. Again, I want to see if he's still got it. I want to see if he's the same guy and Charles Oliveira just got the best of him. You know how big of a fan of Justin Gaethje I am. Like you understand. Oh, yeah. You understand. I've been very outspoken since he's been in the UFC about him. For what he did to Tony Ferguson, and as exciting as that was, I still love Justin Gaethje. I just don't like that he did that. I don't like that after that, Tony Ferguson just hasn't been the same guy.
Yes, but that is still, and I'll argue, one of the most important fights in UFC history. For how it propelled the sport forward during the pandemic.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because that was
giving
a big
people.
One.
Yeah, it energized people towards this is a medium that we should continue doing, and this makes sense. Like that fight just injected TRT right in the ass of the UFC when it needed most. Yeah.
I like that analogy.
I know there's a lot of things wrong with whatever I just said. But
that's fine. That's a good metaphor. That's a good metaphor. Just put it right in your butt. So I mean, Conor McGregor coming back. Obviously, he just punched a DJ. So I don't know what's going on with his life. I don't understand what he's doing as a person. I've never defended him as a person. I said that I have come out and said I appreciated some of the things he did during the pandemic. Like he donated stuff to like some stuff in Ireland. Like what he's done with Proper 12, like as a businessman, like what he's done for the UFC, all of those things I don't know if I necessarily praise anybody, but I have been appreciative of those things, being a fan. And I don't think I have ever outright come out and said like, oh, I love Conor McGregor and everything that he does is golden. Like obviously he seems like a real piece of shit a lot of the time now. He used to be really congratulatory and very humble in a loss, and even when he won, he used to, with the fighter that he fought, he still cuts a mean promo and all that other stuff and talks shit, but afterwards, like he's usually pretty complimentary of the person that he fought. That's just not him anymore. I don't know if he'll ever get that back. I mean, that Cowboy Cerrone fight looked like a new, brighter future for him. Like, hey, he comes out and he's much more dialed in as a person. And then that first Dustin Poirier fight, like, it seemed super respectful. And I was like, going forward, if this is what we get from Conor McGregor, I'm okay with it. Honestly, like, I think the UFC has not moved past him. I don't think the UFC has moved past him. I think the lightweight division has moved past him, though.
Absolutely.
I don't think the UFC will ever move past Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor will just quit competing in the UFC. I think that's how it goes, because no matter how long he fights, he will always be a name. If you brought Brock Lesnar back right now, the dude would sell out. Like he would sell. It would be 1.5 million pay-per-views.
He would sell more pay-per-views than John Jones, Francis.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, Brock Lesnar versus John Jones sells better than Francis John Jones, 100% of the time.
Okay, let's say Brock Lesnar versus Stipe outsells John Jones.
Absolutely. It's not even close.
It's Francis.
It's not even close. I think Francis John Jones probably sells like 450, 500 tops. I mean, you might be getting in the 600, 700s is a huge stretch.
I was gonna say I'll give him 600 as like a.
I think,
but honestly, the hype is kind of dying down a little bit. There was a time it could have been 600. I think it's closer to that 450 now.
I think if John Jones comes out, smokes a heavyweight, I think the hype will be right back, and I think we'll be that 600. You know, like I said, like I don't know if he's ever been solo. I don't know if he's ever solo sold more than 750. I think he's been on like a compilation card, you know, where you know there's been other headliners on there where obviously were the draw and it wasn't just John Jones. But dude, Brock Lesnar, hands down, second biggest draw in UFC history, right behind Conor McGregor, and I think Conor McGregor only is a bigger draw because he. Now, I think one of the things that makes Conor bigger is the fact that he had more fights. He's had more fights in the UFC.
He had more of a streak that built up his name.
Right.
Like, Conor McGregor built it up. Brock Lesnar was kind of
he had it built in.
Yeah, he had it built in. McGregor earned it.
Yeah, and because he had like a national thing behind him, so a lot of people from Ireland. It was a big deal. Obviously, I think the sport at the time that he started fighting hit more eyes. I think
it was the right place, right time, right personality.
Yeah.
It all just kind of came together for him.
Yeah, but Brock Lesnar to this day, I still think comes back, sells 1 million pay-per-views easy. He could fight.
Hold on, I'll throw you something. I think right now Brock Lesnar outsells Conor McGregor.
I don't know if I buy it. It'd be close. I think that depends on the matchup and how they build it, but I'm not going to outright disagree. I'm not going to just come out and say you're wrong because that I see a world where that's possible. It's just it's hard to outsell Conor when he's always in the media. I guess.
But think about the hype of a Lesnar return and how much in the media that would be.
If it's built up right. But if it's a UFC 200 thing where they announce it like a month or 2 months ahead of time and like he just sneaks in under the radar to help boost ratings so that they can sell it to another organization, I don't think it's as big.
4 months heads up for each of them for their next fight. I think Brock Lesnar outsells Conor.
I would take that bet.
All right.
I would take that bet.
It'd be a close bet.
I think it's fun. We should do it. Like, and I don't know how you isolate the two because you can't have them close together, right?
Nope.
Like, if we did this in the real world, we can't have them close together because then you get fatigue, right? Like, you can't spend $75 2 weekends in a row for a lot of people.
I'd say you'd get like one in January and then one in
June or July.
Yeah, one in July.
Or like,
so you
I
get
would
a little
say a December
cool down
card, yeah.
You get a little cool down period for like 2 months after, and then the next hype train starts.
I think Conor would outsell him. As much as I love Brock, I think Conor would outsell him. It'd be close.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. I appreciate it. Like and subscribe. Hey, next month, I don't know if it's next week, maybe 2 weeks from now, we are going to start. Whenever Nate's free, we'll organize it.
I am significantly more free on Sundays as of now, so yes, I now this my schedule has changed. So
the idea is we are going to watch Cobra Kai. I'll give you a heads up probably the week beforehand, and then say, hey, we're gonna have spoilers the next week. We'll watch the whole first season. We'll review the first season, talk about it. Same thing with the second season. We might put some weeks in between there to give us some cool down period, and then we're gonna watch the third season when it comes out, in December. So look
Yep.
forward to that. Any other? I might do some more visual audio stuff. I'm gonna try to add maybe. I don't know if I can do clips because I think I'll get pulled. But I'm gonna try to find a way to make this more visually interesting for you guys. So please like, subscribe, let people know. The more people I get to watch this stuff, the more freedom I have to start doing all those other things. So you got anything else?
No, good
All
wrap
right.
up.
All right. Thank y'all. Have a great week.
Yeah, take care.